Amelie lived in a small town surrounded by soft hills and dusty roads that glowed golden when the sun set. Everyone in the town knew her name. She had a calm way of speaking, a kind smile, and eyes that always seemed to understand what others were feeling. People often said she had the heart of a mother and the patience of a teacher. It was true. Amelie worked as a teacher at the local school, where she taught children how to read, write, and dream big. Her classroom was full of color, laughter, and small drawings the children made for her. Though she lived a simple life, Amelie was content. She loved her job, her small garden, and her evenings spent reading under the old tree outside her house. But one thing began to trouble her, something that didn't make sense, no matter how she thought about it. In the past, Amelie had received attention from kind and respectful men. Some were from the same town, others from nearby villages. They admired her for her calm spirit, her intelligence, and her beauty that glowed from within rather than from makeup or jewelry. She had been engaged once years ago, but it had ended peacefully when both agreed they wanted different things. Since then, she had taken her time, waiting for someone who would truly understand her heart. But recently, something strange had started happening. Each time a man showed interest in her, things began well at first. They would meet at the market, talk at the local library, or share small moments at town gatherings. The men seemed genuine, happy to talk, curious to know more about her. But then, without any reason, they would suddenly pull away. No message. No goodbye. Just silence. At first, Amelie thought it was normal. Maybe they were busy, maybe they had changed their minds. But as it kept happening, she grew uneasy. The pattern was too clear to ignore. The first man stopped visiting after meeting her cousin Toby at a family dinner. The second one disappeared after greeting her uncle one afternoon. The third, who had seemed truly serious about her, never came back after stopping by her house one evening when Toby happened to be there. Amelie began to wonder if something was wrong with her. She looked at herself in the mirror each night, her gentle face reflected in the soft glow of the lantern. Was she too quiet? Too plain? Did she say something wrong? Her friends noticed her mood change and began to talk among themselves. Maybe Amelie is too proud, some whispered. She's too picky, others said. She's too focused on work, another added. Amelie heard these whispers but stayed silent. She wasn't proud or picky, she was just confused. Each rejection felt heavier than the last, not because she was desperate for love, but because she couldn't understand what was pushing everyone away. One Sunday afternoon, Amelie sat outside her house, watering her garden. Her friend Kelechi walked by and waved. He was one of the few who always spoke honestly with her. Seeing her quiet face, he sat beside her. "You've been quiet these days," he said softly. "You look worried." Amelie gave a small smile. "It's nothing, really. Just thinking." "About the men?" he asked with a teasing grin. She laughed, though it sounded tired. "You heard too, didn't you?" Kelechi nodded. "Everyone talks in this town. But I know you, Amelie. You're not the kind of person who scares people away. Something else must be happening." She sighed, staring at the small flowers she had planted. "That's what I keep thinking. But I can't find the answer. They all seem kind, and then they just leave. Like they never wanted to know me at all." Kelechi thought for a moment. "When did this start?" "Some months ago," she said slowly. "After my cousin Toby moved in for a while. He was helping me repair the fence and staying in the guest room." Kelechi tilted his head. "And the men who stopped talking to you, did they meet him?" Amelie frowned, remembering. "Yes, actually they did. Every one of them met Toby before they stopped coming around." "That's interesting," Kelechi murmured. "Did he say anything strange?" "I don't know," Amelie replied quietly. "Toby is kind, but sometimes he acts like he knows what's best for everyone. Maybe he said something without meaning harm." Kelechi shrugged. "Maybe. But something feels off." That night, Amelie couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what Kelechi had said. Could her cousin have something to do with it? It didn't make sense. Toby had always been protective, almost like an older brother. When she was younger, he used to walk her home from school and help her carry books. He had never been unkind. But then again, There were things she didn't notice before. How he sometimes frowned when a man came to visit. How he would interrupt their conversations with harmless jokes that made her look silly. How he always said, "You don't need anyone, you're fine on your own." At the time, she thought he was just teasing. But now, she wasn't so sure. The next few days, Amelie tried to push the thoughts away. She focused on her teaching, on helping her students prepare for exams. But even at school, her mind wandered. Each time she saw couples walking home together, laughing softly, she felt a small ache in her chest. She didn't long for love in a desperate way, but she did long for truth. Why were people leaving her without explanation? One evening, as she packed up her books, her co-worker Zola asked, "Amelie, are you all right? You've been distant lately." "I'm fine," Amelie said quickly, forcing a smile. Zola smiled kindly. "You don't have to say that. You know, sometimes when things don't make sense, it's not about us. It's about what's around us." Amelie thought about that long after she went home. Maybe it wasn't about her at all. Maybe something, or someone, was creating the distance. She sat by the window, looking out at the quiet street. The moon hung low, lighting the edges of the rooftops. Her heart was calm, but her thoughts were restless. She decided she would find out the truth, no matter what it took. The next morning, she woke early, her mind clear. She would start asking questions, carefully, quietly. She wanted to speak to one of the men who had once shown interest in her. Maybe one of them would tell her what had happened. But deep inside, Amelie felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Fear that she might uncover something painful. Hope that she would finally understand why her world had suddenly turned silent. As she walked to school, her sandals brushing against the red dust, she lifted her chin and took a deep breath. The breeze was warm, carrying the scent of the wildflowers that grew near the river. Life around her continued as usual, the laughter of children, the chatter of market women, but inside her, a new determination was forming. Amelie didn't know what truth she would find, but she knew she wouldn't run from it. She had faced every challenge in her life with patience and grace, and this time would be no different. Somewhere deep inside, she felt that the pattern wasn't just coincidence. It was a sign, pointing toward something hidden, something she had to uncover to move forward. And as the day began, Amelie whispered quietly to herself, "I will find out why." The world around her was waking up, full of light and promise, but for Amelie, the real journey was only beginning. The sun had already started to sink when Amelie sat outside her small house. The sky turned soft shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled of dust and ripe mangoes. It was the quiet hour between day and night, when most people went inside to rest, but Amelie stayed under the big mango tree in her yard, waiting for her friend Kelechi to arrive. She had invited him for tea, hoping that talking to someone she trusted might help her clear her thoughts. For days, her mind had been heavy with questions. Men kept walking into her life, showing kindness and interest, and then walking away as if she no longer existed. It had happened too many times now to be simple chance. When Kelechi finally came through the gate, his familiar smile made her feel lighter. He was carrying a small bag of roasted groundnuts and a bundle of newspapers. "I brought snacks," he said with a grin. Amelie smiled faintly. "You never come empty-handed. Someone has to keep you fed." "You forget to eat when you're thinking too much," he said, settling down beside her. They sat beneath the wide leaves of the mango tree. The evening breeze was cool and gentle. Amelie poured tea into 2 old cups and handed one to him. For a few moments, they sat quietly, listening to the sounds of crickets starting to sing. "It's like they see me once," Amelie said softly after a while, her voice uncertain, and then vanish. Kelechi turned to look at her. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "All the men who came around lately, they just stopped talking to me. One day, everything seems fine. The next, they disappear. No goodbye, no message. Just gone." Kelechi frowned and leaned back against the tree trunk. "That's strange. And it's happened more than once." Amelie nodded slowly. "3 times. No, 4. At first, I thought maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I looked too serious or too quiet. But it's the same pattern every time. They seem interested, they meet my family, and then, nothing." He looked at her thoughtfully, tapping his fingers on the cup. "Who in your family do they meet?" "Everyone," Amelie said. "My aunt, my uncle, my cousin Toby. He's been staying with me for some time now. He helps around the house." Kelechi's eyes narrowed a little. Each one of them met Toby before they disappeared? Amelie blinked, surprised by how quickly he asked that. "Yes, now that I think of it, they did." "Why?" Kelechi tilted his head. "It's just interesting. Maybe it's nothing. But sometimes, the people closest to us can cause trouble without realizing it." Amelie frowned. "Toby. But why would he do something like that?" Kelechi shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe he's being protective. Maybe he said something without meaning harm." Amelie stirred her tea absently, the spoon clinking softly against the cup. "Toby has always been good to me. He helped fix the roof when it leaked. He brings me vegetables from the market. He's like a brother." "I'm not saying he's bad," Kelechi replied gently. "But people can act out of fear or jealousy without realizing it. Maybe he doesn't like seeing men around you." Amelie shook her head. "That doesn't make sense. Toby wants me to be happy. He's told me that himself." "Still," Kelechi said, "it wouldn't hurt to pay attention." They both fell silent for a moment. The light was fading fast now, and the first stars began to show in the purple sky. The air carried the faint smell of firewood and cooking stew from a nearby house. Amelie watched a firefly drift lazily through the air, glowing like a tiny lantern. She thought about Toby, about his quiet way of watching, the way he sometimes interrupted her conversations, or how he often stood near whenever she spoke to someone new. She remembered one afternoon when a man named Damelaire had visited. Toby had sat on the porch, arms folded, saying little but watching everything. The next day, Damelaire had stopped sending messages altogether. Could it be true? Could Toby really be behind it? Amelie's heart felt heavy. She didn't want to believe that someone she loved could do something like that. But the idea had now taken root in her mind, and it wouldn't leave. Kelechi noticed the faraway look in her eyes. "I didn't mean to upset you," he said softly. "I just think you deserve to know if something's going on." "I know," she said quietly. "You're right. I've ignored the signs for too long." Kelechi reached over and touched her hand lightly. "You're a good person, Amelie. Sometimes good people don't see what's happening around them because they always believe the best in others." Amelie smiled faintly, though her heart wasn't at peace. Maybe that's true. The night deepened around them. The moon rose high, pale and calm, lighting the yard in silver. The wind rustled through the mango leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Amelie took a slow sip of her tea, now cool, and stared at the shadows stretching across the ground. Her thoughts circled again and again around the same point, Toby. It was strange how every thread led back to him. The way the men disappeared after meeting him couldn't be a coincidence. But what could he be saying to them? She tried to remember every conversation she'd had with her suitors before they left. They had all seemed eager and kind. None of them had shown signs of fear or anger. But after meeting Toby, they all began to act distant, cautious, as if something unseen had changed their minds. That night, when Kelechi finally stood up to leave, he said quietly, "If you really want to know the truth, talk to one of them. Ask what happened. Don't jump to conclusions." Amelie nodded. "I will." After he left, she cleaned the cups and walked into her small house. The wooden floor creaked softly under her feet. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the flickering light of the lamp. Her thoughts were restless, turning over the same questions again and again. Could Toby really be the reason she was alone? She remembered how he had smiled when she cooked his favorite meal last week, how he laughed when she teased him about finding a wife of his own. Nothing in his face had ever shown cruelty. But still, something about Kelechi's words clung to her heart. As the night grew darker, Amelie lay down but couldn't sleep. The sound of insects outside filled the silence. She turned on her side, then on her back, her eyes open and fixed on the ceiling. Her heart wanted to believe Toby was innocent, but her mind whispered doubts she could no longer ignore. Each question she tried to push away only came back stronger. What had he told them? Why would he lie? What was he protecting or hiding? She pulled the thin blanket up to her chest and closed her eyes, but the thoughts kept echoing in her mind, soft and insistent like footsteps in the dark. By the time dawn began to touch the sky, Amelie was still awake. She watched the first light creep through the small window and made a quiet promise to herself. She would find the truth. She owed herself that much. She would speak to one of the men who had disappeared, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. For the first time in many weeks, she felt a small spark of strength. The kind of strength that comes when you finally decide to stop running from the things that confuse or hurt you. As the birds began to sing, Amelie stood by the window and breathed in the cool morning air. The night had left her tired, but her heart was awake. Whatever Toby had done, or hadn't done, she was ready to face it. And somewhere in the quiet, as the sun slowly climbed over the roofs of the small town, Amelie woke up with a heavy heart that morning. The sun had not fully risen yet, and the faint orange glow of dawn stretched across the sky. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. The thoughts that had haunted her all night still filled her mind. She needed to know the truth. She could not keep living in doubt, wondering if her cousin Toby had really done something to push everyone away. For days she had tried to ignore the signs, telling herself that her cousin would never hurt her. But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that things were not as simple as she wanted to believe. That whisper had now become too loud to ignore. Amelie dressed quickly, choosing a plain blue dress and tying her hair back in a neat bun. She made herself a cup of tea, but she barely drank it. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the cup. She was nervous, not because she feared the truth, but because she feared what it might mean for her family. She decided to start with Billionaire, one of the men who had once shown real interest in her. He had been kind, respectful, and easy to talk to. They had met at a community meeting and had started talking often afterward. But one day, after visiting her home and meeting Toby, Billionaire had suddenly disappeared. No message. No explanation. Just silence. Amelie still remembered the last time she had seen him. He had smiled, thanked her for the meal she'd prepared, and said he'd visit again soon. But he never did. It had hurt then, but now that she suspected something deeper, it hurt even more. She walked through the town that morning, her sandals brushing against the red earth. The air smelled of fresh bread from the baker's shop and the soft smoke of cooking fires. As she passed through the market, she greeted familiar faces, but her heart was elsewhere. She knew Billionaire worked at a small repair shop near the main road, fixing bicycles and radios. That's where she was heading. When she reached the shop, she saw him bent over a bicycle wheel, his hands covered in grease. He looked up when she greeted him, surprise flashing across his face. "Amelie," he said after a short pause, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's been a long time." "Yes," she said softly. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by." He shook his head. "No, of course not. How have you been?" "I've been well," she replied, though it wasn't completely true. "And you?" "I'm fine," he said, glancing away for a moment. "Still busy with work." There was an awkward silence. The sounds of hammers and chatter from nearby stalls filled the air. Amelie took a deep breath and finally spoke. "Billionaire, I came because I need to ask you something important. Please be honest with me." He hesitated, looking unsure. "What is it?" She stepped closer. "When you stopped talking to me, was it because of something I did?" He looked down, his shoulders stiffening. "No, Amelie. You did nothing wrong." "Then why?" she asked softly. "Why did you just disappear like that?" He let out a long sigh, as if he had been holding something inside for too long. "It's not something I wanted to do. But someone told me things that made me think it was best to stay away." Amelie's chest tightened. "What things?" Billionaire glanced around, lowering his voice. "That you were already engaged. That your fiancé was very possessive and wouldn't like anyone getting close to you." Amelie froze. The world around her seemed to blur for a moment. "Engaged?" she whispered. "That's not true. I've never been engaged since my old fiancé years ago." He nodded slowly. "I didn't believe it at first. But the man who told me sounded serious. He said he was part of your family and that he was trying to protect you." "Who told you that?" she asked, her voice trembling now. "I shouldn't say," he muttered, looking away. "Please," she said firmly. "I need to know. This has been happening to me again and again. I can't live with this confusion anymore. If you know something, tell me." Dammelair looked at her for a long time, his eyes full of guilt. Finally, he whispered, "It was a man named Toby." Amelie's heart dropped. She stepped back slightly, her breath catching in her throat. "Toby?" He nodded. "Yes. He came to see me after I met your family. He said he was your cousin. He was polite, but very serious. He told me you were already promised to someone who was working abroad and that it would cause problems if I tried to continue seeing you. He said your fiancé was very jealous and that you didn't want to make it public yet." Amelie's hands began to shake. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. "And you believed him?" Dammelair looked ashamed. "At the time, yes. He spoke with such confidence. And I didn't want to cause any trouble for you. So I thought it best to step away quietly." Amelie turned her face away, her eyes burning. She felt a wave of disbelief and sadness wash over her. Her own cousin, someone she trusted like a brother, had lied to keep people away from her. "But why?" "I'm so sorry, Amelie," Dammelair said quietly. "If I had known the truth, I never would have listened." She took a deep breath, trying to calm her voice. "Thank you for telling me. You did what you thought was right." He nodded, still looking guilty. "I hope you can fix things. You deserve better than lies." Amelie thanked him and left the shop. Her feet carried her down the road, but her mind was somewhere else. The noise of the market faded behind her. Her heart pounded hard in her chest. So it was true. Toby had been the reason behind all of it. The men who had left her, the quiet rejections, the strange looks, it all made sense now. He had been spreading lies about her engagement, warning people to stay away. She didn't know if she was more angry or hurt. Toby had always acted like he cared about her happiness. He helped around the house, fixed things when they broke, and made her laugh when she was tired. How could that same person do something like this? As she walked home, her mind replayed every moment they had shared, his kind words, his serious tone when he spoke about men being untrustworthy, the way he always stepped between her and anyone who showed interest. She had thought it was just his protective nature. Now she saw it differently. When she reached her home, she sat under the mango tree where she had once talked with Kalechi. The branches swayed gently above her, and the afternoon sun cast long shadows on the ground. She sat very still, her heart heavy but her mind clear. Toby had betrayed her trust. There was no longer any doubt. But the question that haunted her now was why. Did he think he was protecting her? Or was there something else behind his actions, something deeper that she couldn't yet see? The thought of confronting him scared her. She didn't want to start a fight or cause tension in the family, but she also couldn't pretend everything was fine. The truth was now out, and she couldn't ignore it. Amelie looked up at the sky, watching the clouds drift slowly. The world around her was calm, but inside her, a storm had begun. She didn't know how she would face Toby, or what she would say when she did. But one thing was certain, she would not stay silent anymore. That night, as the stars began to appear, Amelie sat by her window, the wind brushing gently against her face. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow I'll ask him why." The words felt heavy but strong. She had found the truth, and though it hurt, it also gave her power. For the first time in months, she wasn't lost in confusion. She knew what had been done to her, and she knew where to begin fixing it. The morning sun rose slowly, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and orange. Amelie stood by her window, her hands resting on the wooden frame. She had not slept much that night. The truth had settled heavy in her heart, and though it hurt, it gave her clarity. Today, she would face Toby. She had to. The early air was cool and still. Birds chirped in the trees, and a faint smell of smoke from morning fires drifted through the air. Amelie moved quietly through her small house, tidying things she didn't need to tidy, anything to calm her shaking hands. When she finally stepped outside, her heart was already racing. Toby's house was only a short walk away, down the narrow path behind the school. As she walked, she tried to prepare herself for what to say. She wasn't angry in a loud way. It was a quiet kind of hurt, the kind that lived deep inside the chest. She didn't want to fight him. She just wanted to understand why he had done something that had caused her so much pain. When she reached the house, she saw him sitting on the porch, fixing a broken chair with his usual focus. He looked up when she approached, his eyes lighting up in surprise. "Amelie! You're here early," he said with a small smile. But his smile faded quickly when he saw her face. Her eyes were serious, and her lips were pressed tightly together. "Can we talk, Toby?" she asked softly, though her voice carried a firmness that he wasn't used to hearing from her. He nodded slowly. "Of course. Is something wrong?" Amelie took a deep breath. She had promised herself she would stay calm. "Yes, Toby. Something is wrong. And I need you to tell me the truth." He looked confused, setting down the chair leg he was sanding. "What truth?" She stepped closer, her eyes steady on his. "Why, Toby? Why did you tell people I was engaged when I'm not?" Toby froze. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He looked away, rubbing his hands together nervously. The silence between them was heavy. Finally, he said in a low voice, "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter who told me," Amelie said, her tone calm but firm. "I know it's true. You've been warning men to stay away from me. You've been spreading lies about an engagement that doesn't exist. I want to hear it from you. Why did you do it?" Toby sighed, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of his secret had suddenly become too heavy. "I only wanted to protect you," he said quietly. "I've seen how some men treat women here. They come with sweet words and big promises, and then they leave when life gets hard. I didn't want anyone to hurt you, Amelie." Amelie's heart squeezed. She wanted to believe that it was only care that had guided him, but her pain was too deep to ignore. "Protect me?" she asked softly. "By lying to me? By making sure no one even had the chance to know me?" Toby looked at her, guilt written across his face. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just thought, if they stayed away, you'd be safe. You wouldn't get disappointed again. You remember how you were after your last engagement ended. You cried for days. I didn't want to see you like that again." Amelie sighed deeply and sat down on the edge of the porch. "Yes, I was hurt. But that was my pain to face, Toby. You don't protect people by locking them away from the world." He lowered his head. "I didn't lock you away." "You did," she said gently but firmly. "Maybe not with walls, but with lies. You told them I was engaged. You took away my choice without asking me. You made people see me as someone I'm not." Toby's throat tightened. "I thought I was doing the right thing." Amelie looked at him with sad eyes. "No, you did what made you feel better. You were afraid, not for me, but for yourself. You didn't want to lose control of the people you cared about. You didn't trust that I could take care of myself." Her words hit him like stones. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He hadn't expected her to be this direct, this brave. He looked down at his hands, rough from work, and for the first time, he saw what his actions had done. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I just didn't know what else to do." Amelie's voice softened. "Then you should have talked to me, Toby. You've always been like a brother to me. You could have told me your worries instead of making decisions behind my back." He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening with regret. "You're right. I see it now. I thought I was helping, but I only made things worse." They sat in silence for a while. The only sounds were the chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. The tension between them began to ease, replaced by a quiet sadness. "Toby," Amelie said after a long pause, "I forgave you even before I came here. I just needed to understand. But I want you to promise me something." He looked up. "Anything. Promise me that next time you think you're protecting someone, you'll talk to them first. Don't hide things. Don't control their life. You took my voice away when you decided for me, and that hurt more than any heartbreak could." Toby nodded, his voice shaking. "I promise. I really do. I never meant to hurt you, Amelie." "I know," she said softly. "But good intentions don't erase the pain they cause. We both need to learn from this." He nodded again, his face full of guilt and shame. "Will you ever forgive me?" Amelie looked at him for a moment, then smiled faintly. I already have. You're my family. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll forget. It means I understand. Toby wiped at his eyes, his pride crumbling. You've always been stronger than me, he said quietly. No, Amelie replied. I just learned that strength doesn't come from hiding or protecting. It comes from facing things honestly. The wind picked up a little, carrying the smell of rain. The sky had started to turn gray, and the sound of thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Amelie stood, brushing the dust from her dress. I should go, she said softly. There's a storm coming. Toby stood too. Let me walk you home. Amelie shook her head. No, I'll be fine. I think I need to walk alone for a while. He nodded, understanding. Thank you for coming, Amelie. For giving me the chance to explain. She looked at him one last time. Thank you for telling the truth. As she walked down the narrow path back home, the first drops of rain began to fall. She didn't hurry. The cool rain against her skin felt cleansing, like it was washing away the heaviness she had carried for so long. She thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the misunderstandings, the pain, and though she was still hurt, she also felt lighter. Toby had been wrong, but he wasn't evil. He had been foolish, not cruel. And that made forgiveness easier. By the time Amelie reached her house, the rain was falling harder, pattering on the roof in steady rhythm. She sat by her window, watching it fall. She knew things wouldn't be perfect right away. It would take time to rebuild trust, to let go of the hurt completely. But at least now, the truth was out. And for the first time in a long while, she felt free, not from love, but from the shadow of lies that had surrounded her. Outside, the storm passed slowly, leaving behind a calm stillness. Amelie smiled softly to herself. She had faced the truth, and though it had shaken her, it had also made her stronger. Time passed gently, like the slow turning of pages in a familiar book. The days after Amelie's confrontation with Toby were quiet, filled with moments of reflection and healing. She no longer carried anger in her heart. She had chosen peace instead. Forgiving Toby had not been easy, but it had been necessary. She realized that forgiveness was not only for him, it was for herself, so she could move forward without bitterness. At first, Toby kept his distance. He was ashamed of what he had done and unsure how to face her again. But Amelie, being the kind soul she was, visited him one afternoon. She brought some homemade bread and tea leaves from the market. When he saw her at his door, his eyes filled with surprise and guilt. I thought you wouldn't want to see me, he said quietly. I didn't come to talk about the past, Amelie replied gently. I came to share tea. Family should still share tea. A small, uncertain smile appeared on Toby's face. That simple act broke the wall between them. From that day, they began to speak again, not as before, but with honesty. Toby had learned a painful lesson, and Amelie had learned one too, that love, no matter how deep, must always give space to freedom. In the weeks that followed, Amelie's life slowly returned to normal. She continued teaching at the school, guiding her students with the same patience and warmth that everyone admired. The children loved her. They often brought her small gifts, a mango, a flower, a drawing. Her classroom was full of laughter and color. Amelie threw herself into her work. She started an evening reading club for the children in her neighborhood. She wanted them to dream beyond what they could see, to believe in themselves even when life felt small. She found new purpose in helping others grow. Yet, there were still quiet evenings when she would sit by her window, watching the moonlight spread across the fields. In those moments, a gentle loneliness would brush her heart. It wasn't sadness, just a longing for companionship, for someone who could understand her without trying to control her. But she reminded herself of the promise she had made, not to wait for someone to choose her. She would choose herself every day. She would live fully, laugh loudly, and love her life just as it was. And slowly, that choice became her strength. Toby often stopped by to help her with repairs around the house or to bring vegetables from the market. He didn't say much, but his actions showed how deeply he regretted his past behavior. One evening, while he was fixing a broken shelf, he looked at her and said, "You know, Amelie, I never understood what strength looked like until I saw you stand up for yourself. You taught me more than anyone ever could." Amelie smiled softly. Sometimes strength is quiet, Toby. It's in choosing peace instead of anger. He nodded, humbled. From then on, their bond grew stronger, not built on guilt, but on respect and understanding. As months turned into a year, Amelie found happiness in the simple rhythm of her life. She woke early each morning, tended her small garden, and prepared for her students. On weekends, she visited her mother's house in the next village, helping with chores and sharing stories over roasted corn. Her heart had healed in a quiet, steady way, not through someone's love, but through her own courage. One bright afternoon, as the sun glowed warmly over the school courtyard, a new teacher arrived. His name was Cato, a tall, calm man with kind eyes and a voice that carried patience. He had come from another town to help expand the school's programs. Amelie met him during a staff meeting. He spoke gently but with purpose, and when he smiled, it was the kind of smile that felt safe. Over the next few weeks, they worked together on several projects, building a new library, organizing books, and planning lessons. They talked often, but their conversations were never rushed. They spoke about small things, the weather, the students, the town, their families. Amelie noticed how he listened, truly listened, without trying to interrupt or change her words. It was something new for her, a kind of respect she hadn't realized she needed. One afternoon, after class, Cato stayed behind to help her rearrange the shelves. As they worked, the air filled with the scent of chalk and old paper. "You care deeply about these children," he said quietly, looking at her. Amelie smiled. "They remind me that kindness still matters. Even small kindness can change someone's day." Cato nodded thoughtfully. "Yes. Kindness doesn't need to be loud." For a moment, their eyes met. There was no rush, no expectation, only a simple, silent connection. Over time, their friendship deepened. They walked home together some evenings, sharing stories about life and laughter over simple jokes. Cato never made Amelie feel small or helpless. He admired her independence. When she spoke, he listened with full attention. When she wanted space, he gave it freely. Amelie didn't realize when admiration turned into affection. It happened quietly, like dawn spreading light before sunrise. She found herself looking forward to their talks, their walks, and the calmness he brought wherever he went. Still, she was careful. She didn't rush her heart. She had learned that true love didn't come from longing or loneliness. It came from mutual respect and gentle understanding. One day, as they walked past the mango trees near the river, Cato turned to her and said, "You know, I've always admired your strength. Not many people carry peace the way you do." Amelie laughed softly. "Peace wasn't always easy to find. I had to lose some things to learn what really matters." He smiled. "And what did you learn?" "That the right people never need to be chased," she said, looking ahead. "They walk beside you, not ahead of you or behind you." Cato looked at her quietly, his eyes full of warmth. "Then maybe I'll keep walking beside you, if that's all right." Amelie smiled, her heart calm. "That's all right." As they continued walking, the wind moved gently through the trees. The sky glowed golden, and everything felt light, not because life was perfect, but because she had found peace within herself. That evening, she sat by her window again, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft colors. She thought about everything that had happened, the confusion, the lies, the pain, and the lessons. Toby had taught her that love without trust becomes control. Her journey had taught her that waiting for others to choose her only led to disappointment. But choosing herself, her happiness, her freedom, her dreams, had changed everything. Amelie smiled to herself. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was living. And when love came, it came gently, not to fill an emptiness, but to walk beside her in the fullness of who she already was. The world outside was quiet, the air full of promise. Amelie closed her eyes for a moment and whispered a small prayer of gratitude, for growth, for forgiveness, and for the peace she had found. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she no longer feared it. Life had a way of surprising her, just as it had when all her suitors had rejected her, only for her to find the truth, forgive, and rise stronger than before. Now, she understood, every rejection, every heartbreak, had led her back to herself. And that was the greatest love story of all.